So here in the US, the price of eggs become ridiculously high. And the problem is that for a lot of natural bodybuilders or just people out there trying to build muscle, eggs have historically been an inexpensive way to get the protein requirements. And so a lot of people out there are asking me, Kevin, what do? I cannot afford to buy eggs anymore. And is there anything I can do to save money but still get the protein I need to increase my muscle mass? And the answer, thankfully, is yes. Because as someone who grew up not with that much in the way of resources, I know a thing or two about how to save money and still get the protein that you need to build muscle. Because I went from 125 pounds to 190.5 pounds on a really tight budget. And in this video, I'm going to share some of the secrets that I used to pack on so much muscle mass naturally without spending that much money. And funny enough, as cheap as eggs were back then, there were times when I couldn't afford it and had to figure out strategies to work around it, but keep on building muscle mass. And the problem with inflation is that today it's eggs, tomorrow it's chicken, then beef and fish, and even vegan protein sources. But the good news is that the money-saving tips apply to all protein sources. So stay tuned and let's talk about how to save money but keep on building muscle, and some of the concepts that I'm going to share with you may forever change the way you think about high protein intakes. Let's talk about it. So by its very nature, high protein intakes tend to be on the expensive side. And the problem is when you have historically cheap protein sources like eggs becoming exponentially expensive, for a lot of people out there, it makes it very difficult to get the protein that they think they need in order to keep on building muscle. And I'm going to share with you tried and tested tips that are going to help you maintain your muscle mass. And the first tip is eat less protein. So when I was growing up in Trinidad, I had that period of growth of 125 pounds to 198.5 pounds in competition shape. I was taking in 120 grams of protein per day on average. 120 grams per day was my total protein intake, which might sound like a lot when I weighed 120 pounds, but I kept on building muscle. Even when I weighed over 190 pounds, 120 grams of protein was still the sweet spot that allowed me to keep on building muscle. Now, that flies in the face of the typical idea that you need to have 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And one of the first things that I have to lay out is the fact that that is completely false. And right there, you may say, well, Kevin may be some sort of genetic freak that is able to build that much muscle with a lower protein intake. But that's not the case at all. And you have to bear in mind that most people on the planet don't have the resources to eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. And a lot of people I work with over the years, some of them would eat only 1 meal per day and making remarkable progress. And almost all of us were taking in somewhere around 0.6 grams of protein. And bear in mind as well that a natural athlete is only so much protein your body can use at one point in time anyway. One of the primary benefits of steroid use is the fact that it increases protein synthesis, meaning that someone using steroids can eat more protein and have their body use more of that protein to keep on building muscle, much more so than a natural athlete ever could. And the problem is, and always has been, that because most of the fitness influencers out there are on steroids and eat a tremendous amount of protein to build the kind of muscle that they walk around with, people follow what they do, thinking they get the same results, and they don't. And when people ask me, well, that protein intake you were taking, was that all animal protein? And the answer is no. Which leads to the second tip, which is supplement your animal protein with inexpensive plant protein sources. That 120 grams of protein that helped me grow so much came from animal protein sources like eggs and chicken, plus some fish, and very rarely small amounts of beef. And for the most part, a very large percentage of my protein intake came from things like bread and peanut butter, rice and oatmeal, because back then I didn't have oat bran cereal. That came later. And what would happen every once in a while, it'd get to a point where I simply didn't have enough money to afford either eggs or chicken. And what I would do is I'd make sure I got exactly the same amount of protein I was missing from peanut butter sandwiches. And what's most interesting is that it made absolutely no difference in my progress whatsoever. I kept on building muscle at pretty much exactly the same rate as the years went by. And then as I got older, I found something else I could add to my diet whenever things got tight, and that was lentils. I would literally just take a little bit of lentils, which were exceptionally cheap, boil them up, add them to my rice, and get a complete protein profile from eating lentils and rice, because there were times, to be honest, where I simply couldn't even afford peanut butter sandwiches. And again, most importantly, my gains kept on coming regardless of where my protein sources were coming from. As long as I was getting enough calories and maintaining that 0.6 grams of protein per pound of body weight every day. I think it's important to touch a little bit about exactly how protein works in our bodies, in that a lot of people have this idea that if it's not animal protein, that it can't help you build muscle mass, and that's completely untrue. So proteins are made up of amino acids, and animal proteins are considered first-class proteins because they contain all the essential amino acids that our bodies cannot synthesize on its own. Plant proteins are also made of amino acids, but they don't contain the 9 our body needs to grow. And so right there, a lot of gym bros have the idea that if you're not getting a food that has all the essential amino acids, you're not going to grow. And that's compounded by the propaganda we get from the protein supplement companies that keep on pushing the idea that you need a very high protein intake in order to keep on building muscle. And that's absolute nonsense, because here's how our body works. Our body creates what's called an amino acid pool, which is exactly what it sounds like, a pool of amino acids. And the thing is, plant proteins, which may not necessarily have all 9 essential amino acids, if you mix non-animal proteins, you're going to get all the 9 essential amino acids that your body needs to grow in that combination, and that's going to go into your body's amino acid pool. As such, you can also have an animal protein with a plant protein at any time of the day and get a complete protein because it all goes into your amino acid pool. Your amino acid pool is always there, and your body is always trying to make sure it has all the amino acids it required, and it makes no difference whatsoever if those amino acids came from animal sources or plant sources, as long as you get all the essential ones your body needs. So at a time when things like eggs are extremely expensive, doing something as simple as adding lentils, for example, to your protein intake and eating less eggs isn't going to do anything whatsoever to slow down your muscle growth. In fact, adding something like lentils or any other source, like beans, for example, will increase your fiber intake, which will help you long-term as well with maintaining stable blood sugar, and you'll find yourself having less cravings over the course of the day. So my recommendation, for example, if you're used to eating 6 eggs every day, have 4, have 3, have even 2, and supplement it with some form of plant protein, because at the end of the day, something like lentils or beans are far less expensive. And if you're trying to get your calories up, then nuts might be a good idea, or even peanut butter sandwiches. So reduce the number of eggs you're eating and increase your protein intake by that same amount by using that same amount of either nuts or peanut butter sandwiches, and you'll be just fine. And most importantly, you'll save a ton of money. Now, I know from personal experience that it can be a bit of a stress out. You're used to eating the same things every day, day in, day out, but it's also important to maintain your mindset and realize as well, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Maybe the price of eggs may go back down over time, but also bear in mind that there are millions of people who are probably watching this very same YouTube video right now who don't eat anywhere near as much protein as we do over here in developed countries and are making fantastic progress. And one of the things I try to do as much as possible with this channel is share my experiences and share as well the fact that there are many different ways up that mountain. I've always lived my life with the idea to whom much is given, much is expected, and try to share as much as I possibly can with you. So now that you've seen this video on protein, you need to learn my other secret about how I use a high protein and high fiber diet to avoid cravings and stay away from eating junk food for decades. Give this a watch, as it's another game changer. I know it's going to help you on your path towards excellence as well. So thanks so much for tuning in. Know that I believe in you, and as always, Excelsior.